Yo guys, it's Slyroh. You already know that today I'm going to be bringing you a video ranking all 14 characters of Gnosia. I just recently finished playing the game and I can't stop thinking about the characters, the story, and just how much fun I had overall, even if it did take me a little while to beat the game. But surprisingly, I don't really see any other lists like this on YouTube. There's a couple around the internet here and there, but I don't see that many people like fully ranking their favorite and least favorite Gnosia characters. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm really excited to do this, and yeah. Before we hop into the list, I do need to sort of emphasize that there aren't really any bad characters. Every single character can speak to you and can be relatable depending on your life experience and things like that. For me, there's different things that I like about characters that might differ from you. So let me know your opinions in the comments below. Excited to hear about them. And yeah. The things that I'll be taking into consideration for this is mostly going to be based on their personality, their role in the story, and then I can take some other things into account, such as design and how they interact with you in the game during like gameplay sessions and things like that. So that's all I'm going to be using for this criteria. Like I said, this is a fun list. There's no bad characters, but some are better than others. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Also, quick note, this video is going to go into spoilers, including the main story as well as the true ending. So if you do not know about that, I highly suggest that you either play this game yourself or go ahead and watch my playthrough of it first. That way you don't accidentally spoil yourself throughout watching this list. So you have been warned. Starting things off at the bottom of the list is going to be Xiaoming. Now, I didn't always think that Xiaoming was going to be bottom of the list, but obviously he had a pretty bad start. He comes off not even wanting to take part of the discussions. Then he kind of, doesn't treat Setsu very well, and is generally just unpleasant to be around, which, is not a great first impression, but it is cool to learn about, sort of his upbringing, and the way that he was raised, and then how all of his friends that he grew up with were basically, like, killed. And he doesn't trust authority, doesn't trust a lot of things like that, and I do like that aspect of him, but there wasn't really anybody else that did anything worse. And then there's a couple gameplay things that I didn't like about Xiaoming. He always seemed to be against me for some reason, and a lot of times he would just be wrong. He would just be siding with the Gnosia even if he wasn't bad. And then his groveling, oh my gosh, he made me lose like at least 2 different games because he groveled right at the end when I could have won. So, those things kind of made me mad. He also doesn't really have any sort of big contribution to the overall story of the game. He's kind of off on his own. He's not really connected that much to any of the other characters. I mean, his biggest connection is the fact that he gets killed by Setsu from time to time randomly. So there's not a whole lot more there for him. And he's just he's so unlikable that he literally comes from the planet Arsla. So I think it kind of speaks for itself. Trying to figure out what character I should put at number 13 was really difficult, because after having my clear least favorite, there's kind of this grouping of characters that I feel either fall a little flat or just don't personally relate to me and what I like as much. So this was really difficult, but at number 13, I have Stella. Stella is really cool, but I think the problem with her is that she kind of becomes forgettable. Obviously, her existence as like a humanoid version / computer made by Levi to sort of easier interact with Jonas, the captain of the ship, is really cool concept, but I think the fact that she is more just like this AI logical thinking, kind of quiet personality kind of limits the amount of like overall character that she can have. She doesn't really have like a wide emotional range by any means. She's kind of just quiet, logical, and it's just kind of there, and there was sometimes that she would be a part of the game, and I would just kind of forget that she was there. As the game, kind of progresses, I did find she would always be approaching me, wanting to collaborate, which I guess is, like, fine, but I don't know, I just was more interested in learning about the other characters, maybe because the other characters have, different planets that they're coming from, they have different upbringings. Stella doesn't really have, like, a childhood or, like, an upbringing or anything like that to explore. So I think that's why she falls just a little bit flat for me, but she's still really cool. Obviously, just the fact that she exists and how she exists is really cool, but it's not quite on the same level as other characters. So for this little grouping of characters that don't quite do it for me as much as the others, I did decide to put her at 13, but she could have easily been within the next couple spots as well. Falling into a similar category here, at number 12, I have Chippy. I think Chippy is really cool and really interesting. but he really only has one interesting thing going for him, which is the fact that he is trying to become a cat, and then, successfully does become a cat, so props to him. But he just doesn't have that much to offer outside of that. Literally, of his notes, 4 out of 6 of them are just about being a cat, or wanting to be a cat, or being around cats, and the other 2 are that he's just kind of a balanced person, and, not eccentric in any other sort of way. And the other one is that he just worked as a crew member of a freight vessel. So it's like, there's not a whole lot of other things to his personality that aren't just, hey, I want to be a cat, which is great. I love it. We all know everybody wants to be a cat, but there's not any more for him to offer. He doesn't have any sort of ties to the main part of the story at all. He doesn't really stand out in any way. He's another one that sometimes I forget he's even there, because he'll go rounds on end without speaking up, and then he's not always on my side. Sometimes he is, sometimes he's not. He's kind of all over the place while not being eccentric in any way, and I just prefer characters that stand out more consistently for more than, like, one reason. Where Chippy has this one thing, it's really great. You get some really great, kind of, when you first find out, and you see, like, I think when you lose to him as Gnosia, you'll see, like, the cat, like, coming out of his neck. Things like that, when you go to hang out with the one time, and then, like, the cat part of the body is, like, running on the treadmill while he's running, or whatever. Things like that are really cool. It's got some really fun things like that. I'm all for it. I support the cat boy 100%, but there's just more to other characters than what he has to offer, so unfortunately, in a cast of great characters, he's going to fall on the lower end here. Moving on to the next one, I had a really difficult time trying to place this character, but at number 11, I have Yuriko. Yuriko is another one that doesn't... It's hard to say that she doesn't have, like, a personality, because her main sort of personality as to who she is that she's just really scary. She has insanely high stats. She's going to get in your way. When she's bad, she's going to be really hard to get voted out, and when she's good at, being on your side and helping to find, but it's really hard to decipher when she's good, when she's bad, because she's always very scary, which usually means that when I'm Gnosia, I try to take her out as soon as possible as a result of that. She acts as a lot of the lore dump, I guess, for what Nos is and things like that, and so she kind of gives you a lot more of the overall story elements, and is connected to the overall story, but I don't think she has as, like, quirky as a personality as I would like, just because she's more of, like, hey, I'm really good at just being good at everything. I, help side-rise, like, humans, things like that. All of the crazy stuff she does. I'm not really good at explaining, like, every little aspect of the story and, like, how she's involved, but I do understand that she's, very central to the plot and sort of giving the player exposition as to, like, how things are all fitting together. But outside of that, she doesn't have... it's hard to create, like, the same sort of personal connection to her, if that makes sense, as there is to other characters, because she doesn't, like, hang out with you and really, like, have any sort of backstory that really personally connects you to her about, like, her upbringing or any sort of personality flaws, because she's kind of flawless, really. So I just prefer characters that have, a little bit more personality, in the sense that you can connect to them and you can see kind of their weaknesses, their strengths, and something that's a little bit more well-rounded. Yuriko is just scary lady who's scary, and you don't want to be against, and which is fun, but I prefer other characters, so I had to keep her just outside of the top 10. Starting off the top 10 here, this was a little difficult for me, but it is going to be Gina. She actually started off a little lower because she could also be kind of grouped into the characters that don't stand out as much, just because she's a lot more reserved and things like that. But I think she stands out a little more just because, like, that is, like, kind of her main personality trait, is that she's reserved, but she's also good at picking up on liars, and she really hates lying herself, to the point that in one event, she basically sacrifices herself because she'd rather just sacrifice herself as the last Gnosia than lie to anybody. So there's things like that that really make her someone that I just like. She does have a really good design. The purple hair does, like, stand out. I haven't talked too much about the designs of the other characters so far, but, like, they're all solid. But I just think Gina, there's not, like, a ton to her. She's not super overly connected to the main plot. She does kind of blend in, and especially earlier in the game, she started to become one of the more forgettable characters, but as time went on, I just, when I compare her to someone like Stella, I just, like, she's just not as forgettable to me. But I also kind of have a little bit of a soft spot for more the quiet, reserved characters, and you just can't help but want to root for them. So I root for Gina. I want the best for Gina, but number 10 I think is a pretty good spot to start off the top 10. And then from here on out, we're going to start really getting into some great characters. These are all really good characters, but like, oh man, it only gets way up from here. Coming in at number 9 here is going to be Comet. Comet is a really interesting character, as I feel like I wasn't super drawn to her initially, and I'm not entirely sure why. Her design does stand out, and she seems to have a very sort of bubbly personality that kind of stands out. She really gives off this kind of like little sister energy. I don't know if that's just me. That's kind of the vibe that I get. She's kind of there, like, you know, being like playful, optimistic. She's like always happy. You don't really see her sad that often, which is really cool. I think the thing that kind of puts her this high up is because of her slime, her upbringing of being on a planet that has a high mortality rate with the slimes. You know, I assume killing a lot of the people on her planet, and it's kind of like adapt or die. So she has that, which does give her that cool sort of design all over her body, like the tattoos, you know, quote unquote tattoos, that are the slime things. It's really, really interesting. And then obviously sealing the deal with the event where the slime kind of escapes like the pod and starts attacking the ship. Like, that's not 100% Comet, but like the slime is a part of who Comet is, and I think that's really interesting. So she leads to a lot of pretty interesting game events in that sort of sense. She's also someone that's really good to have on your side because she's really good at picking up on liars. She's another one that if I'm Gnosia and she's not on my side, she's a really easy candidate to kill first, because I don't want people seeing through me lying. So, you know, she's kind of fun in that way. No super big ties to like the overall story, but I think she brings a lot of cool stuff to the table that as the game went on, she really grew on me. Finishing off the bottom half of this list, coming in at number 8, is going to be Otome. And I can't help it that there's just so many good characters in this game, because Otome is just precious. She doesn't like hurting people. She, you know, cares for the ones around her. She's a little bit shy, but, you know, she's just so sweet, and you want to protect her at all costs. And like, why wouldn't you? She's just this cute beluga whale riding around on the spaceship, just being everybody's friend. And, you know, there's not much more to say about that. She doesn't have any super ties to like the main story. Her upbringing is pretty interesting just because she is, you know, a beluga whale that has life and consciousness enough to be, you know, essentially considered a human, even though she wants to be like a real human someday. But she's just, you know, a positive force. I love characters that are just optimistic and happy and positive. However, if she is against you, specifically if she's Gnosia, it can be really tough to get her voted out, because obviously everybody wants to protect precious Otome, and I don't blame them for it. So I don't really have much more to say. Otome number 8, let's get into the top half of the list. While my top 3 has been pretty much set in stone since I started making this list, I rest assured my numbers 4 through 7 have all sort of switched around and could maybe change at any given day. But this is the order that I feel the most comfortable with, but just know that 7 through 4, it's extremely close, and I think they're all so good. But starting off, number 7 is going to be Square, or as she's probably known, SQ, but I called her Square since the beginning, and that's just something I have been doing since. I love Square. She's this, you know, bubbly personality, but she's also kind of not psychopathic, sociopathic. I don't know. She lies a lot. But there's a lot of instances where you can kind of tell that, you know, she's not always being 100% upfront with everything that she is or everything that she feels. And I do think that she hides somewhat of her true feelings behind that very over bubbly like personality. And obviously her backstory is so interesting. I mean, you know, she was basically born, or forced to be born, and then just kind of put to sleep inside this pod where she wasn't really even living. And then as her mother tried to transfer her consciousness to her, she was kind of born as her own thing a year ago. So she's this 1-year-old, like, I don't even know. Like, there's so many, like, interesting things as to who she is and how she was brought up. But yeah, she's just really interesting. Obviously, she seems to have some strong feelings towards the player, you know, always wanting to collaborate, although that's not always with good intentions. Sometimes she just likes screwing you over because she can, and I like that. You know, not every character needs to be super pure and, like, great hearted or anything like that. Sometimes it's just nice to have a character that, like, doesn't really care if they screw you over and will lie and do whatever it takes to win. I don't know, I just appreciate that from Square, and I just think that she's really neat. She has a really cool backstory stuff, and I don't know, she's just fun to have as part of the game. She stands out among a lot of the characters, and yeah, she's really great. And so before I continue rambling on the fact that she's just great and has a lot of cool stuff to offer, we're just going to go ahead and move to the next one. It's kind of funny how this list is worked out, because number 6 is going to be Kukrushka. And obviously, if you know anything about the true ending of this game, Kukrushka has very strong ties to Square. As I didn't pick up initially, Kukrushka is actually Manon, Square's mother, who was like transported from a different universe, and that's how she's a doll that's just awakened a personality, which is just, you want to talk about a game full of interesting characters and interesting backstories and how they're made. Kukrushka really just ranks up there as like one of the craziest ways to exist, and it's something you don't even find out about until the true ending of the game is insane. And it really took me until before, like, basically putting this list together to look back and remember, oh, the Kukrushka incident happens because you just left Square's mother alone with Remnin, her pet. That's scary. Kukrushka is scary. She doesn't talk, but you can tell everything she's saying. If she's good, obviously everybody wants to, like, protect her, but if she's bad, it's really hard to go against her, and she can be a really tough opponent to have against you. But she is just so interesting with where she came from and how she exists that I could not put her up this high. It's just insane how interesting of a character she is, and the ties that she has to the whole time loop stuff. I mean, it's just very interesting, and I think Kukrushka is super neat and super interesting in game. So, yeah, I had to put her at number 6. And if you thought that we were done with the connections on this list, so we're going to be kicking off the top 5 with Remnin. I just kind of spoke about Remnin, and obviously his connection to Kukrushka /Square's mother. Yeah, Remnin is another one. Like I said, I do really enjoy sort of the more shy, reserved personalities. And I think he actually reminds me of Gina a lot, but the main difference between him and Gina is that he has a way more tragic backstory that just makes me empathize or sympathize with him just so much more. I really like his design as well, and it's just really cool. He's from a planet with only AI. He didn't really grow up like having a lot of friends. He's a little bit scared to speak out in fear of like the consequences. And he also just lasts in game in most time loops longer than someone like Gina does. And so I think that's why he stands out. But if he didn't have like the same sort of connection to Square and things like that, he probably would end up a little lower on this list. But because I like his design, I like his backstory, and I just sort of like his personality as a whole, I had to put Remnin up this high. But like I said, 7 through 4 can kind of switch around on any given day. But I think Remnin is a good person for me to have in the top 5. I just really like him a lot, and I just generally want the best for him. And then there was sometimes that it was fun to play with him, because sometimes he would notice a liar when I was bad, and that was always fun to mess with him with. So, Remnin's cool. I do like him a lot. At number 4 is probably the biggest surprise for me personally, and that's going to be Rakio. At the start of the game, I didn't like Rakio at all. I thought Rakio was the worst, and I pretty quickly got annoyed at the fact that they would always be talking down, thinking that they're better than everybody. But as the game kind of went on and you meet a lot of personalities that are either just there and kind of blend in, I mean, Rakio stands out always. Rakio, I ended up coming to sort of love the fact that they would just put you in your place and be like, I'm better than you, whatever. And I think coupled with the fact that it was so easy to get them voted out all the time whenever you wanted to, was pretty hilarious. I think if that sort of personality was also mixed with somebody who was impossible to get voted out, I think I would get legitimately aggravated. But I can't get mad at Rakio. I can just vote them out and then laugh about it. So it's pretty great. Also, the fact that Rakio ties into the overall story as like the original owner of like the Silver Key, that was stuff that I wasn't expecting at all. I thought Rakio was just there to be the sort of antagonistic character, but to actually have such a huge part in the main story really surprised me. And obviously, I can't talk about Rakio with at least bringing up the fact that as someone who strongly believes that representation matters, I think Rakio is an amazing example of representation. Obviously, despite the fact that Rakio has an entire event about being non-binary, when I think about like the main personality traits of Rakio, that doesn't really come up. I think of Rakio as being, super into logical reasoning and logic puzzles and things like that, as being very antagonistic as far as things like that. And just being like somebody who is knowledgeable about like the silver key and just overall things like that. And there's just a lot of other things that they offer to the table. Also, the other part of the representation thing that I really like about Rakio is sometimes, due to like negative depictions in the media, like, you know, in the past, sometimes representation can kind of overcompensate by bringing to you a character that fits some sort of demographic and makes them basically perfect and flawless, and like, oh, look at this, I'm going to go against the negative stereotypes by creating this perfect character. And Rakio is not. Rakio is clearly someone that you're kind of supposed to hate, and in a way I do, but because I hate them, I also love them. It's a weird thing to explain, but essentially, you made a character that just happens to be non-binary, instead of just being like, oh, we're going to make this non-binary character just so you can see like how great it is. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly, but I just think that when it comes to representation, making a character first matters, because not everybody from one specific group are all the exact same thing. So you shouldn't be trying to just make a character from any sort of group just be one thing. Make a character first. That way it feels more natural to just sort of the world and things like that, because that's just how it is in the real world. And yeah, obviously Rakio isn't the only representation here either, but I just think that a really good job was done with the handling of their character. So had to at least mention that. But Rakio is fun to love, fun to hate, and just fun all around. So had to put them in the top 5. And now we're on to the top 3. And like I've already mentioned, the top 3 was pretty much on lock from once I started putting this list together. But number 3 is going to be Jonas. Now, I'm going to be honest. If Jonas wasn't so hot, would he be at number 3? I don't know. But he is a really, really fun presence regardless. Also, he became a video game addict and just played video games for like 100 years, and then he grew old and died alone. So, I mean, if you want to talk about having the most relatable character to put in a video game, I mean, that's basically me in a nutshell, probably. So, you know, there's that. But also, he just has some really fun phrases and just things that he says. He's very goofy. And the fact that he has high stats but isn't really able to use any of them because he's just kind of gone insane is super interesting. He's unpredictable, and that's really all there is. You either love or you hate Jonas, and obviously it was love at first sight for me. And I just wish Jonas did get a little bit of a better ending, but, you know, it's kind of just, I guess he was too far gone, he's too crazy, and there was really no saving that. But I would love to do my best to try and save him. And coming in at number 2 is going to be the best bro, Shigemichi. Shigemichi was literally designed to just be your best friend. He's so cool, and he's always sticking up for his friends, even if they might be bad, even if they might be good. Shigemichi's just always there for you. He's really fun to have around. Obviously, that game that he played against Jonas, hilarious. One of the best scenes in the game, if not the absolute best. The absolute funniest, I should say. And then you also got a really interesting backstory, because you kind of just get numb to the fact that he looks like an alien, because you're like, oh, you know, there's a beluga whale, oh, there's someone that's an AI, like, whatever. You know, you kind of get numb to the fact that, like, oh, yeah, Shigemichi does look a little weird, and for me, like, one of the last things I got was learning about his, you know, traumatic accident where he had to essentially get new skin, which is super interesting. But I always just root for Shigemichi. I also got the ending, because you can get 2 different endings, depending on if you go see a movie with Setsu, and then you get Shigemichi, and then the other option, I think, is, like, fishing, where I think Otome becomes, like, a part of the final thing. But I got the movie one, because that's what I picked. So Shigemichi being best bro, just wanting to hold hands while watching a movie. I mean, he's too pure for this world. I love Shigemichi so much, and I can't put best bro any lower than this. So obviously he had to come in here. And coming in at number 1 with the pick that shocks absolutely nobody, of course the best character is Setsu. I think almost anybody can agree with this. Setsu is the best character. They essentially were willing to sacrifice themselves just to save you and let you live on without them, because they needed to go pass through and fill up the silver key and basically do all that stuff in a different universe, and was willing to leave the universe that you were in so that way you could be happy and just continue to move on, at the expense of everyone forgetting that they exist. Setsu is a really down-to-earth character. Early in the game, I really thought Setsu was going to kind of be one of those that sort of blends in with a lot of the other, like, not super loud personality types. But even though Setsu doesn't have, like, a super loud personality, I mean, obviously, how much they are involved in the overall story of the game, you know, is just huge bonus points there. and just the ending just really sealed the deal. And then the fact that in the true ending we were able to go and basically save Setsu and repay Setsu for what they did for us is really great. And then seeing them take charge in terms of coming up with the idea to expose Manon outside of Square, and then save Manon in a way of transferring her consciousness into like the Kukushka doll, things like that. I mean, Setsu is just so interesting. And then also, it was a really interesting sort of game mechanic that you would sometimes share game information. So you could play a loop with Setsu where they're Gnosia and you're human, and you know that, but you still need to try and figure out how to convince people of that, or it can be the other way around, and, you know, it just adds a sort of interesting wrinkle to the actual gameplay. Setsu is just one of the best characters, probably in all the video games that I can think of recently. I really think that they just had such a good, you felt the chemistry between yourself and Setsu, despite the fact that you don't really have your own personality. You're playing an almost silent protagonist that is just sort of there doing things without being given too much of your own like personality assigned to you. You're kind of just playing as whoever you are, and you can just still feel a genuine connection between you as the player character and Setsu. And I think it was just done so well. I think Setsu is amazing, and I think almost everybody feels that way, so that's not much of a surprise. Well, there you have it. That was my list ranking all of the characters in Gnosia. Like I said, I think these characters are all great in their own way, and I wouldn't be surprised if your list looks completely different than mine. I would love to hear about your favorites and least favorites in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more. Let me know of other games that are similar to this, because I really liked this game, and if there's anything that is like this, I'd like to, you know, keep playing games like this, because I think it's just so interesting. So that is going to wrap it up. Hope you all have enjoyed, and I will see you around. Peace out.